We're going to go ahead and start the meeting. I want to welcome everybody here. And the first thing we're going to have is the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Rick Bird. He's the minister with the Church of Christ. Please stand.
If you bow with me, please. Our God and our Father in heaven, we approach thy domain as the creator of this world, as the one who has given us life. We thank thee for all the things we have in this life. As we look among ourselves, Father, and see one another, we pray that we will treat one another with dignity and honor as you have treated us. Forgive us, Father, of our sins against thee, as we forgive others. As we look among this world, Father, we pray that we will treat it as you would have us to do. Precious is it in your sight, and it will be in ours as well. We pray for wisdom for those that are in this room. May they conduct themselves in a way that will please you and their fellow man. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Would you remain standing? We're going to have a moment of silence for Raul Rodriguez. He passed away and he was on the WCAB board with the IID and he farmed in the North End. For a moment of silence, please. All right, thank you very much.
God bless you.
I'm going to ask to have this item pulled from consent. We'll discuss it separately.
All right, were there any reports taken, anything out of closed session, Mr. Garber?
Yes, sir. The board gave direction to real estate negotiators with regard to three pieces of property, and the board further took action to oppose a tax default sale and purchase 8,400 square feet located on Portrero Avenue in the town site of Dixieland for the price of $890.
Okay, anything else?
No,
That's
sir.
it. Okay, we're going to have the approval of the agenda, and I know Director Desert has requested that number 6 be pulled from consent. So is there any other items to be pulled from the consent? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, by move the second, please vote. Thank you. Okay, now we have 2 resolutions honoring Director Mendoza and Mr. Kershaw. So would the board please move down to the front? 3?
Yeah, just a moment.
I make a motion to approve all 3 documents.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, please vote. Thank you. All right, would the board please move down to the front so we can honor Director Mendoza? Bring your iPad with you. Let's just all get together.
Kevin, come on.
I asked you to come on, Kevin.
That's how you know, but you won't tell me now. Scoot over this way. Not too close.
Not too close. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this resolution. It's from the Pearl Irrigation District. It's honoring Stowe Mendoza as outgoing president.
Altamirano Mendoza. You couldn't pronounce it.
Whereas Estela Leano Mendoza was elected, that's why I passed it over, was elected to a 4-year term on the Board of Directors of the Pearl Irrigation District beginning in 2001 and re-elected for another 4-year term beginning 2005 and 2009.
Just go so
Okay, you want me to jump to the last
Just go
one?
to the very
Okay.
last.
Now therefore, be it resolved, the Imperial Irrigation District Board of Directors hereby resolves that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this meeting to express its appreciation for Mrs. Mendoza's service. That a copy of this resolution suitably described be presented to her as a token of appreciation for her service as President of the Imperial Irrigation District in 2011. Passed and adopted this 10th day of January 2012. Okay, thank you. Now we have, what about Mr. Kershaw? Is he,
He's not gonna be here.
well, we have a resolution, but we're not gonna.
You're gonna present it next week at a luncheon it's gonna have.
Okay. Now we have a resolution by the Imperial Irrigation District celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. And this one's a shorter one, so I can read it.
I like that frame better than mine.
Whereas since 1976, when the U.S. President issued a proclamation declaring February as Black History Month, the country celebrates during the month by showcasing the history and notable contributions of the Afro-American citizenry in this great nation. And whereas the Valentin Academy for the Arts and Science is hosting a breakfast and presenting its first annual I Have a Dream Community Builders Award intended to capture Dr. Martin Luther King's vision and characteristic. Now therefore it be hereby proclaimed, the Imperial Irrigation District Board of Directors joins other organizations throughout the Imperial Valley in celebrating Black History Month, particularly supports the efforts of the Wellington Academy of presenting the I Have a Dream Community Builders Award to a worthy recipient who has clearly demonstrated special qualities of keeping Dr. King's legacy alive in Imperial Valley. Passed and adopted this 10th day of January 2012, by the Imperial Irrigation District. Where is Bill here? Bill, supposed to be up here, Bill. Come on, Bill.
I'm scared with this company.
Especially next to me.
I'm nervous already. Big smile. Dr. King, be proud of that.
This is Dylan McFadden for everybody.
Let's keep that quiet.
Okay.
Sherry's the moment.
Okay, Tony? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, before we go on to board member comments, I want to recognize that we have John Benson in the room over here to my left over here, and he used to sit on this IID board for 2 terms, right, Mr. Benson? Okay, so we appreciate you coming. We appreciate Steve, your son, bringing you here, okay? Thank you. Okay, then we're going to go on. Maybe you were going to speak at the public comments. So we're going to go on to public comments. Anybody that has anything that they want to say from the public, please come to the podium. And you have 5 minutes to talk.
Good afternoon. My name is Jean Montenegro, and I'm an English professor at Imperial Valley College. Last spring, my students and I decided to do a project to welcome home our veterans. And so they had assignments that they had to do. They didn't write to the veterans, they just wrote to the writing prompt. And I chose the assignments that I thought were most applicable to that project. And they also had to do quick writes. Quick write is a quotation that's on the board when they come into the room, and they have to immediately respond to it. And so I had taken the quick writes from a text, and I'm explaining all this because of when you see the book. So the students, when I asked them about the project, they were excited about it, and so we went forward with it. And this is our book. A student of mine designed the cover, and it says, "Veterans Welcome Home." And I had to get copyright okay from the book that I'd taken from quotations from. And when I talked to the people in the publishing office, the lady herself was a veteran. She said, "I'm sure there'll be no problem." So the book has, I mailed 3 copies to Congressman Filner's office. 1 went to the Veterans Hospital. I've taken copies to our Veterans Clinic here in the Valley, here in El Centro. And I had 2 Iraqi vets in my class this last semester, so they got copies. And the reason I'm here is that you helped defray the costs of the printing. I can't begin to tell you what that meant to me and my students and our veterans. So here's the book, and what was interesting was I found patriotic paper at Staples. And then when my student designed the cover, she matched it almost exactly. So thank you, thank you. My students were thrilled. They've gotten copies. And I just can't thank you enough for backing the educational project of our students at Imperial Valley College. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I'll give that to you.
Mr. Kelly.
Okay, Mr. Benson.
There we go. I don't know if it's on the agenda to talk about the Salton Sea restoration and everything, but is now the time to talk?
But we have a mitigation time, but you can speak now also, Mr. Benson.
Okay. Well, I think there's, I've always been kind of a basic practical person, and there are 2 simple facts that come out on the Salton Sea restoration, and the first is that the state made a mishmash of the study. A lot of that stuff was stupid. I don't know how else to explain it. The 14-foot walls and things like that to hold the levee up. That's, if you have a huge earthquake and the levee collapses, what happens? All the water runs into the middle. That's what happens now. So there's really no, all of their expenditures and the 8 billion and things like that are completely off the wall from what normal business people would look at. So what it boils down to is that the Imperial Group, I happen to participate because I don't like to have my water stolen, but I guess that's just me. But I'm not mad at the IID, and it's pretty obvious that that Dutch plan to build a levee with a plastic tube as a core, and you could end up with about what they have in Mission Bay, and if unfortunately I'm old enough to remember when they dredged Mission Bay, and they just pumped the sand out and let it stand there for a couple of years and built hotels on it. that's what they did. And but you could go along and do that with some money from the water transfer. It'd have to be more money. It really ought to be paid in addition to the money that they're paying now. That's why you ought to really renegotiate the deal. But that plan is the only one that makes any sense. The levee, the cascades, or whatever you want to call it. So when you look at the deal now, we're paying money to farmers to fallow, and we're putting the water in the sea to hold the level up, and we all know that the level has to go down for the levee system to work. Probably ought to go down 3 or 4 more feet to about minus 235. And so what we ought to, obviously your request to the state to sell the water instead of putting it in the sea, I'd go, if you want to go ahead and sell the water, I don't think you have to have the state's permission. They're not going to stop, if it turns out to be a dry year, they're not going to stop the coast from getting the water. And it's kind of stupid to be putting water in the sea to raise the level, because that's contra to what the IID eventually needs. And so that's one thing I think that is really important. We have to focus on what is practical and what works. And I haven't seen anybody do that. I don't think, the Bureau knows how to build giant dams out of concrete. If you're not talking giant dams out of concrete, why, the Bureau's helpless. They don't have any idea what to do. The state, I'm not too pleased with them. I don't think they know what they're doing either, because they sure didn't show it when they came down and made that study. But I think it's going to end up being a local job. It's going to be people here getting together and doing it, because the Salton Sea should be a source of jobs, of recreation, of hunting and fishing. It ought to be a gradually growing economic bonanza for the Imperial Valley. And now it's just dying. And one of the big advantages of the levee plan is that it's cumulative. You can build one levee, and when you finish it, close it off and start desalinizing the water and see what happens to the fish. I don't think the EIR is going to be a big problem, because nobody knows what, you're talking about a de novo situation. You're going to go from being too salty to grow anything to not being too salty, so you shouldn't have that problem. Anyway, I just wanted to get that in to, please stop spending money to go backwards. Now, admittedly, you'll probably get sued by everybody in the world, but they'll do it anyway. And but I do think it's the right thing, and the people in the coast will recognize that it's the right thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Appreciate you coming down. Does anybody else have any public comments? Aaron?
Good afternoon, Erin Moyola, Colburn, Imperial County. I want to start by thanking you for getting the information back to us so quickly that we requested a couple weeks ago during the board meeting. It came complete and was just very nicely done, and I appreciate the communication I had with Gloria and with Vance Taylor very, very much. After having a really cursory review of that, though, we need a little bit more information to kind of flesh out the entire issue, and so that's why I'm going to read this request into the record, and then I'll give it to Gloria, because I did include an example of what we're looking for, so that there won't be a lot of question, because it sounds like a lot of information, but when you see the example, it makes a lot more sense. So, pursuant to the California Public Records Act, CoLab requests all records and writings in any form possessed, controlled, or accessible to the IID with respect to evaluation criteria sheets and bid prices for all proposals covering the last 2 years. A copy of an example of our request is attached. Please respond within 14 days. And I did change it to 14 because we said 10 last time and got a very nice communication back saying we can do it in 14. So anyway, this is the example here, and this was provided to us a couple times, so it seems to be fairly readily available. It's the evaluation criteria, and then it just shows the different bid prices for the proposals. So I'll give this to Gloria real quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you coming up. Anybody else from the public for public comments? Okay, if not, we'll go to board member comments. We'll start with Director Hanks.
Just one comment. During closed session, we went over the evaluation format for the general manager, and he had presented us with his goals for 2012, and I just wanted to. I didn't want to go over those goals because it has to do with his evaluation, but I just wanted to add a comment that I was very appreciative of the goals that he brought forward. They're very inclusive, and for the first time since I've been on the board, I think it is a very definite roadmap to what we need to accomplish this year.
Thank you, Director Desert.
No comment.
Okay, Director Mendoza.
Yeah, I would also like to comment on the resolution that was presented to me and name it various accomplishments that we did as a board. I think one of the greatest accomplishments that we did as a board was to hire Kevin Kelly as the general manager, and I think that stands out as the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. Also, I'd like to thank our employees. They collected toys for tots, not only here in the Imperial Valley, but in La Quinta. So a lot of kids were happy Christmas morning thanks to our employees. That's it.
Director Sanchez.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to, I know we've already thanked Director Mendoza for her service here for last year, but I just want to thank Stella. I think she did a good job.
You can say that without a smile.
I say it with a smile. You're a pleasure to work with. So,
yeah, right.
As to my board member comments, last Thursday evening I went to the IVEDC's annual dinner, and they gave the IID Energy Department this award to IID Energy. So, Mr. Ivy, this belongs to you, and I'll give it to you later. And then on Friday, I was at a meeting, invited to a meeting by Supervisor John Renison, and Jack Terraza was there, Supervisor Jack Terraza and Louis Castro from the city manager at Clexico and Mr. Carrillo. And we all met with Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez from the Los Angeles area, and she had questions about border issues, but she also had questions about water issues, and that's why I was invited to the meeting, so I had a chance to discuss the QSA and following and some other issues with her. So I thought that was a very good meeting. And as to my comments as the president moving forward in the year 2012, my main thing I'm going to do is work with the board, work with the general manager, work with staff, try to be as transparent as possible. I know we have a lot of energy issues and a lot of water issues and other things, but we're going to try to have open dialogue, and we'll all work together for the ratepayer. So that's kind of where it's at. So thank you very much, and we'll move on to the consent. I know, Director, we've already pulled item number 6.
So I move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Pardon? Oh,
You what?
comments from the legal and general manager.
Oh yeah, we've got to leave off Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, Mr. Garvey have to talk. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, President Menville, members of the board. I want to make a record of the following. and I'd like the minutes to reflect that in conjunction with the procurement policy that is being ready for presentation to the board, I'm recommending that the revised policy that comes back to this board contain a pre-qualification element in the bidding process, that the weighted value assigned to cost by the evaluation committee make up a greater percentage of the total score than it does at present, and that in any instance in which the lowest cost bid is not awarded or is not recommended for award, that the evaluation committee must provide a written justification and rationale for its decision that will be available to the board and public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber.
No comments, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion for the consent, please? You made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, please vote. All right, thank you. And we will move on to the item number 6 that was pulled, we'll have it at the end of the meeting. We'll move on to information, and that deals with water general manager matters. Mr. Silva.
Yeah, just have a couple things. We've received 3 proposals in response to the System Conservation Plan RFP. That was on the 21st of December, I believe it was. We have a group analyzing them. We were scheduled to have interviews next week, but we're slowing down the process a little bit because we want to make sure that we're getting the right alternative for IID. So I'll keep you informed on a weekly basis what we do there. We've received 10 responses to the East Mesa Groundwater Review RFP. They were reviewed, those 10, and they're down to 3, the top 3, and they're going to be interviewed on the 19th. The East Highline Canal below the Nectarine Check, which is at the Sing Reservoir, below that point, was dewatered for this week. We're taking the silt out of the bottom with using dozers and excavators, and if you have a chance to go up there, it's quite a sight. We're going to do that all week. We're working 10-hour days, and we'll try to get down to the R check, but we'll go as far as we can with the week. That's all I have.
Does any board members have any questions of Mr. Silva? Anybody from the public have any questions on Mr. Silva? All right. Thank you, Jesse. We're going to move on to item number 9, which is update on a quantification settlement agreement mitigation measures, and I think Mr. Wilcox is going to handle that. It's on page 64 of the agenda.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on the water transfer mitigation. We'll cover a few things today. As always, any questions are welcome. The topics we're going to go through are listed there: the burrowing owl, managed marsh, and in the end we'll spend a little time on the IID petition to the State Water Resources Control Board, and it speaks a little bit to Mr. Benson's comments earlier, I think. So in general, we've been making progress on several avenues. We've got lots of different things in the mix. You heard Mr. Silva just a minute ago talk about the East Highline Canal, and most of our folks are out there this week capturing fish and doing other things on the East Highline Canal, pardon me, which is part of our mitigation measures. And we appreciate the help from from Mike Mizumoto's group in that. About a year ago, we instituted a new burrowing owl protocol for establishing populations in the valley. And you'll remember the concern back in 2007 and 2008 when we did the original surveys was that we showed a drop in population from one year to the next. The other concern was it cost us a tremendous amount of money each year to count all the owls in the valley, or at least all the owls in the IID right-of-way. So one of the things we did is a sub-sampling regime that we started last year, and IID folks participated in that. Both the HCP team and the environmental group were instrumental in helping with that, as were some of the folks from Ag Water Management. We're going to do that again this year. I'm happy to say last year that the owl population is back up to approximately what it was in the highest year in 2007. The reason that's good news, IID is covered under the HCP, so we don't have any real concerns from that aspect. But for the general farming community, listing the owl would be problematic, even though there are some exemptions for agricultural activity. But if we can continue to show a population increase, and we can continue with some of the management measures we've got, I think over the next couple of years we can blunt the criticism that the owl should be listed either at the state or federal level. The population last year was about 4,560 pairs, which is equivalent to what it was in 2007. 2008 it dropped. We anticipate that the number should be roughly the same this year. We will have to amend the contract with the organization that AECOM is helping us with the owl surveys, because it just takes too many people to go out and survey in a relatively short period of time. We don't have enough folks. We're going to amend that contract. There is an increase in that based on the amount of time it took last year. It's still within the JPA budget and shouldn't cause any issues, but there will be an amendment to that contract. On the Managed Marsh, Managed Marsh continues to do quite well, and we're very pleased. There are a couple of minor issues up there right now. We're working on adjusting the elevations in a couple of cells, and we're looking at trying a pilot project. You'll remember that phase 2 of the Managed Marsh has to be built in 2014, I think. One of the things we want to try to do with 2014 is have most of the design done in-house with some help from the Farm Bureau and some other folks. The last one was designed outside. We had a lot of modifications the Farm Bureau and other folks in the valley helped us with. And IID's people built that, the Managed Marsh, did the construction. They did an incredible job. We want to do that same thing again. In that regard, we're going to look at trying a small pilot project in one of the cells this year to do some land leveling with a GPS or a GPS guided gizmo that Ed Hale owns and some other folks in the valley have, land leveling. We'll try that to see how that works. We think that might save us money on phase 2 if this works on this phase. Again, that's a JPA covered activity and is included in the budget. Then I wanted to go into a little bit of the air quality mitigation and talk a little bit about this kind of blends into some of the petition issues that we've got, and then some of the additional air quality mitigation pilot projects we're trying, and it blends into the state's species conservation habitat, which we'll talk about in just a minute. One of the things we've discovered over the last few years, we've had multiple data streams of information coming in on different things on air quality that we might be able to do. And one of the things we discovered very early on is just dust suppression on the playa is incredibly expensive and may or may not work. So one of the things we've been challenged with over the last couple of years is trying to identify some other alternative land uses that we might put on some of that playa. And you folks have heard some of those before. We're talking about algae. We're talking about reclaimed farmland. We're talking about habitat. Anything that covers playa, whether it's covered with water or algae or photovoltaic cells or geothermal activity, makes sense to us, because that means that's that much we've got to treat for dust emissions. So one of the things we've looked at in the last 6 months or so is the possibility of reclaiming farmland. And there are some issues with that we have to work through, and the legal department's been helping us. General Services has been helping us look, and real estate's been helping us look at those things. We probably will have to come back to the board of directors with some recommendations on what kind of protocol to best put into place to have the ability to lease some of that land that's below the minus 220 elevation to farmers for reclamation and farmland. Most likely that will take place on the over on the western side of the valley, over to the west of the New River. Those areas are a little sandier, a little more likely to be reclaimed as farmland. We're looking at multiple use in the other areas between the two rivers. That's geothermal, that's prime geothermal activity, and we've been partnering with several of the geothermal companies to try and develop some kind of a process where we can move that forward. And again, same situation. If it's covered up with geothermal activity, it doesn't blow as much dust. Then finally, the other thing that we want to talk to you a little bit about today, before I forget, sorry. So we are going to develop some kind of process to bring back in front of the board, because we don't have anything in place to recognize how best to lease that land to an individual farmer. There'd have to be some concessions in the lease for the cost of the land. There'd have to be some concessions in the lease for the fact that the farmer has to do a lot of activity, a lot of work to get it to where he can farm it. Plus, there has to be some protections in that lease for IID in case the sea ever raises an elevation. I think there's a snowball's chance in Imperial Valley that'll ever happen, but in case it does, we want to be protected from that. Then finally, I wanted to talk to you just for a few minutes about the species conservation habitat and how important that is in our air quality mitigation program. And as most of you know, it's part of the petition that IID proposed. We're proposing stopping mitigation water to the sea, cause an elevation decline and a salinity increase. One of the reasons we think the species conservation habitat is important, and this is, by the way, the state's program for what they call Period 1 activities at the Salton Sea. It is not Salton Sea restoration per se. It's just an activity that they plan to do until they get financing in order to move forward with the restoration. One of the reasons we like it is it does help from an air quality point of view. It helps from a habitat point of view. And it does one of the things that we heard in some of the comments earlier. It actually puts something on the ground at the sea that's incremental, that can be built on. We can, as you'll see from that, you can build on extra berms and move that further out into the sea as the sea declines. Or you can stop it and just butt up against it with the restored sea, the Blue Water Lake. So this is the state's plan. This is IID property for the most part. We've been cooperating with the state over the last 6 months to get some surveys done out there so that we can identify exactly where the property boundaries are. It's a little confusing. The area to the on the east side of the map, or the right side of the aerial, is the area that will probably be constructed first. We will probably be back in front of the board, I don't know, in 6 months or thereabouts, to talk about how best to convey that property so the state can use it for species conservation habitat. This is the money that the state will use, is the money in part that the 3 water agencies paid into the restoration fund, and then it's Prop 84, I think, too. As part of that, most likely, as we move forward with the petition and the revised mitigation plan for that petition, IID will cooperate in building some more of this habitat, and we probably will build it very similar to what you see there, so that can't see that very well, but this area here and this area here probably won't be built in phase 1. Again, we're early in this process. We don't know for sure, but probably won't be built by the state. IID might build those areas. The advantage to IID is twofold. One, it's wildlife habitat mitigation, which is a good thing for us. It helps us in what our requirements are for the QSA, and it's dust control mitigation, and that's the most important aspect of it. So as we move forward with this, we'll be back in front of the board on several occasions to talk to you about how best to move this project forward. The state's going to proceed with theirs no matter what happens with our petition that goes that's at the State Water Resources Control Board. And as I said before, I think probably in about 6 months or so we will be back to talk to you about the best way to convey that land in a lease or something, so that IID has no air quality mitigation responsibilities on those areas, and the state does. And then finally, we want to talk for just a few minutes to give you a brief update on where we stand on the petition. And as you'll remember, the petition was to stop mitigation water delivery for the last 3 years of what we call Salton Sea mitigation water to the sea. The reason for that is originally that plan was probably put in place because everyone felt the state would have a restoration plan in place by then. It doesn't look like they're going to have one. So that water, which was supposed to stabilize the sea for that length of time and keep the habitat viable, really isn't very useful for that purpose. So we're suggesting that we can do better things with it from an air quality point of view, better things with it from a mitigation point of view, by taking that money, marketing it to someone, or taking that water, marketing it to someone else, and using that money to create habitat. It also leverages us a little bit in that we can move forward with the final HCP and NCCP. We've had a tough time getting the agencies to pay a lot of attention. Suddenly we have something, IID has something that is of great value to them, and I think we can use that to leverage our position. It improves our air quality mitigation. It provides more money up front to do air quality mitigation, and I talked a little while ago about how multiple uses is going to reduce the cost of air quality mitigation. It's still incredibly expensive. The pilot projects we've done to date seem to work, but they're more costly than we originally thought they were. So with this revised delivery schedule and with the amount of money that generates, we have close to enough money to cover the cost of air quality mitigation and habitat mitigation. We're still in the process of revising that and looking at that, but right now we think that the petition and the change in delivery water will help with that. We provide higher functioning value wildlife habitat, which is important to lots of folks in the valley, and it's a more stable funding mechanism. One of the criticisms that U.S. Fish and Wildlife had in particular on the existing mitigation plan was, what is the long-term funding for that plan? With this change and with the additional money that it generates, we have a stable funding mechanism or much more stable funding mechanism for the mitigation. So what do we have to do to get there? We have to revise our existing screen check HCP and CCP. We're in the process of starting that now, and we have to revise the existing screen check EIR EIS. Those two documents go together. So the way that we've chosen to do that is take 3 of the consultants that have worked on this plan before, and the reason we chose these 3 consultants is because one of them is under contract now for finishing the existing NCCP, HCP, and the other 2 have all been very involved in either the air quality mitigation or some of the other planning for this process. So these 3 consultants will help us develop the mitigation plan and the EIR EIS hopefully with a completion date of sometime around July 2013. That's important because we need that decision so the state board can decide, can rule favorably on IID's petition. This means that these will be sole source consultants, quite frankly, and we will come back to the board with contracts, I think, at the 24th meeting, January 24th meeting. We also are in the process of developing a cost-sharing plan with our partner in the San Diego County Water Authority. We're close to, I think, final agreement on that. There are a couple of details to work out, but we're pretty close. And so in the end, this is going to mean some of the cost of this is already included in the IID budget from years past. We had a $3 million settlement to complete an HCP NCCP before. We have roughly $400,000 of that budget left. That'll apply to this. Then the cost share with San Diego County Water Authority, we don't have final numbers in yet, but we're in the neighborhood of $1 million a piece, or someplace in that neighborhood. That's pretty much the update. I went through that pretty fast. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board for Mr. Wilcox?
I've got 2. On your species conservation habitat, are you coordinating with the geothermal known resource area?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time working with the geothermal folks, some of whom are in the audience today. We've worked a lot with Carl. One of the reasons we're over at the New River, or they're over at the New River, is because that was at least a less likely geothermal area. We also looked at the Alamo River, and because that was such a high-quality geothermal area, we didn't go there. One of the things that we have consistently told the geothermal folks and the state is that in order for this to work, and remember IID sort of holds the key here in that it's IID property, in order for this to work, it cannot adversely impact geothermal. And that would be our challenge, is to work that into the lease somehow so that we can do that.
The second question, where you mentioned that requires revision to the existing screen check of the HCP / NCCP and EIR EIS. Will that have any impact on the litigation that's going on and will be going on in Sacramento?
That's an excellent question. We think that it will improve IID's chances on that litigation. There are some areas in the EIR EIS in particular, the existing QSA EIR EIS, especially in air quality mitigation, but in some other areas too, that based on the knowledge we have now after spending 7 years or 8 years implementing some of this, we have more knowledge that we can do a better job of writing those sections of the document and strengthen that from the point of view of litigation.
It may be the same argument in a different form. In other words, parties that have an interest in the environmental mitigation can argue it before the state board just like they would have argued it in Sacramento.
Yeah.
True.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other directors have questions?
No.
If I might, President Minville, I just want to add that when we come back to the board on that cost-sharing agreement will depend on how quickly we turn it around at staff, and we're trying to do it in sync with our co-petitioner, San Diego County Water Authority. And Bruce misspoke. It's actually 4 years of mitigation water, just under 500,000 acre feet that we believe would provide more durable, lasting value from habitat, air quality, and all the other factors that he listed, including geothermal resource access. But it's entirely dependent on when we're able to turn around, and it could be as early as next week.
Okay.
The cooperation agreement we're talking about is not specific to the water order that we're working with at the state. It's more specific to the QSA and the expanded EIR that we're looking at needing.
The updated environmental work does have a natural tie-in to the existing litigation, but it is separate and apart and has to do with the preservation of habitat and the qualities that the board approved in the resolution from last year.
And that's something that would be taken on irrespective of the water order.
I think it's a distinct path.
Is there any questions from the public for Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Morgan?
Mike Morgan, Brawley, California. I only had a few minutes to look up Plan Tierra, and I might be just seeing a name change at the company. But if you've been working with them, I'd have the board look into the principals' identities. For if we've been working for them, they say they formed a little over a year ago.
Planterra did form just a little bit over a year ago. John Dickey, who was one of the principals for Newfields at the time, formed his own company, and the reason for having him on board is just the continuity. You're absolutely right. They formed about a year ago.
Be careful with commingling businesses and personalities within your staff with business contracts that you're going to be issuing. It absolutely doesn't work. You can't have prior principals come on your staff and then bring in their companies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Anybody else from the public want to comment on Mr. Wilcox? Okay, Bruce, you have any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, we appreciate the work you do. I know you kind of behind the scenes, but you do a lot of good work that you're doing dealing with environmental issues on a Salton Sea.
Well, thank you. We have a lot of help, and I'm the one that takes the credit, but there's a whole group of people back there.
I know you got a staff you're working with, and we appreciate all the work that they do, so thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 10, review of major work authorization covering the concrete lining of the Rita lateral, and that's Mr. Gomez is going to handle that, and Mr. Stills, are you going to be part of that too? Okay.
I guess the word MWA kind of got his attention. Good afternoon, members of the board, President Menville. What you have in front of you is the MWA to replace 3/4 of a mile, is about 3,240 feet of lining for the Rita lateral. The Rita lateral is located, if you turn to page 91, you will see the location map. Excuse me. The lateral, the section that is going to be replaced, is located just north of 78 115, where 115 kind of connects to 78. This is east of Brawley. The original lining was installed in early 60s. It says 1961-62, and it's about 50 years old. I think it's about time to replace this section. Also, we found out there's a capacity issues there. You know, it's not possible to run this canal to its original capacity due to the condition of the lining. The cost for the project is estimated to be $534,000, and it was included in two of the budgets. The budget from last year for the engineering and the construction it's included on the 2012 budget. And the reason why we did it is because it has to be done during low flows, which is the winter. So it's kind of, due to the MWA process and some of the other signatures and stuff, it's difficult to get it done before the end of this quarter. And again, this is spread out for information only, so for approval will be next.
Okay, is there any questions from the board on this item?
Just one. Mr. Gomez, is this strictly an M&O? It doesn't have anything to do with the definite plan?
No, this is capital improvement.
Okay, thank you.
What's the normal life expectancy of a
30 to 40 years. It depends on the conditions of the soil. In this area in particular, excuse me, we analyze the soil, and it's high in sulfate, so it affects the concrete. So we are on this new design. We are adding something that additives that it will allow the concrete to last a little bit longer. Even though 50 years is pretty good, life. I mean, for concrete lining.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public on this matter? Mr. Stills, did you have anything to add? Okay. Okay, you'll bring this back for an action item at the next meeting.
That's correct. I just want to call your attention to one item, and I have the schedule that is originally included in the MWA has been revised, and have copies of the revised schedule here. This one originally was intended to be brought out to the board last year, the mid-December, but because of different issues, it was not possible. So I want to make sure that the dates are correct, that are revised in the package. So I have the revised schedule here, and I'll provide it.
Yeah, give those to Gloria. She can hand them out. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is number 11. It's update on the Imperial Integrated Regional Water Management Plan and review of amendment number 6 to service agreement number 81-1026 with GEI Consultants, and Tina Shields is going to handle that.
Hi, good afternoon and Happy New Year. I am back to just remind you that our efforts on the Imperial Regional Planning effort are ongoing. If you recall, last year we sort of slowed down because we had some funding issues. The state had awarded us a $1 million planning grant, but due to Sacramento budget issues, they failed to be able to execute that grant, and then it got caught up in their budget cycle. So we finally did come to resolution on the grant terms and get that document executed in December of last year. So we're ready to restart our efforts and finish this project off. So next Thursday from 9 to 11:30, we will be having what used to be a monthly water forum meeting to continue putting some of these issues to rest. And then at this point, we're really trying to work on the document itself and getting all of the text written up and reviewed so that we can take it to the various agencies and districts for adoption. Hopefully late summer is our target goal right now. So we'll be working on that. In order to effectuate the DWR grant, we have an increase in GEI service agreement. So these are no net impact to the district financially. It's pass-through money, so it's just a billing mechanism. And we are going to be back billing them for some work that was done at the end of last year as well. So we'll bring this back next week. It's just under $600,000.
Okay, is there any questions from the board?
Nope.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Hanks.
During the stopgap that you were talking about, there was $150,000 used. Was that paid back to the water department?
It will be when we have to send the bills through, but when that money comes back, it will go back to, I don't know how that works, but it will go back to wherever it came from.
Be rebated back?
Yeah.
Okay. It's my understanding that all of these expenditures to date has not come from funds paid by the ratepayer.
The original funding for this was provided by ORMAT as a condition of their water supply contract. So those were the monies we've been using, and then when those were expended, we did manage to extend this process by getting the DWR grant.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from the board? Any questions from the public on this issue? Okay, Tina. Thank you. We'll move on to energy, general matters. Mr. Ivy.
Thank you, President Minville. It's a slow day for energy in this meeting. Just want to put up a reminder for the board. On December 20th, the board authorized a 30-day notice period for the RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard enforcement resolution. And Mr. Vance Taylor, Mr. Antonio Ortega are working on that resolution still, taking a look at it, making another pass. We want to make sure that the board and staff in general are comfortable with the language in this resolution before we bring it through for final approval. So that's yet outstanding. So we should be bringing that either late January or early February.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Ivy? Any questions from the audience for Mr. Ivy? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to General Services number 13, the reorganization of the real estate and environmental sections. Paul.
I'm going to quickly just jump to the last slide here to set the foundation. That was one too many. In terms of this reorganization, the focus is on this side from real estate over. This is currently what it consists of, real estate environmental, and I'm occupying a role here as a focal point to lead addressing issues that were brought to the board's attention as part of the Solar, which two key items, the authorities, our balancing authority, and really West Side Main issues. So from a reorganizational standpoint, that's the premise, the last slide, which I'll come to at the end, and then I'll go over the presentation from that aspect. In terms of issues like Solar, there's a number of issues that staff reviews from an authority standpoint, like I mentioned, like the IID's balancing authority, and asset issues like operation maintenance issues along the West Side Main and the criticality of that and what we're dealing with on the Solar. There's a number of other issues that are very integrated between real estate and environmental, and it all ties into land-related stuff, either from real estate or land, and there's a number of those issues listed here. So in order to solve this concern or address this concern, the idea is to create a centralized location within general services, being that composite group now. And the intent, and there's two processes that deal with this. Our permitting process, which comes later on in terms of projects and things of that nature, which probably more deals with the assets aspect, and then the environmental processes that we go through. Well, the intent is to make sure that we document things properly, that we distribute them, and where energy and water are having a focal point, a key contact to make sure that that person is aware of the issues within those groups. And then as part of that, make sure it's reviewed, assessed, and addressed. And then when it does, it will come back to general services. And what we do is compile a letter that summarizes everything, or in terms of a permit, a summary of that. So once that is done, then we communicate it. And I'll go over the communication aspect in this in a little bit more detail on the next slides. So there's really three elements that we're looking at: having coordinated management, a monitoring system, and jumping quickly, a good reporting and communication. So with regard to the coordinated management, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we address strategic and day-to-day issues. Again, they really tie into land, which deals with environmental and real estate. And the idea is to have an alignment within the departments, agency-wide, and with all the interdisciplinary items that we have. And I think we're improving on that with the communication that we had. Again, as I mentioned, it would be led by me. And then I would use existing staff, as I showed on the last slide, to coordinate things within general services. As far as monitoring, we would have an improved outreach process, such as with the BLM. And as part of this, we feel and we're in the process of improving the collection of data, the tracking of the data, the reviewing of the data, coordination, and all the elements that go with that. And two things that I've mentioned earlier: one is really the environmental documents, the other is the permitting process. I'm being a little bit redundant here, but all initiations, all things will be coming, in particular with those two items, into general services, then be distributed out, and they'll return. And so the final responses will be distributed by general services. And that kind of leads into the next slide. So the intent is to have very good internal coordination, to have the external outreach that we mentioned earlier, to have immediate communication of the strategic elements to the general manager and the board in particular, and then ultimately responses, in particular with actionable intelligence to the board, and more routine responses to staff, management, and outside agencies. So this is the organization within General Services that will support that, and I'll be leading this group in trying to address those concerns.
On the biological control, the fish farm, you all did get no $600,000, did you?
I missed something here.
Rhetorical question again.
I must have been out of the board meeting when that was discussed.
That's all right. Mr. Kelly knows what I'm talking about.
Is there any questions for Mr. Peschel from the board on this issue? Paul, have you made a kind of a trial run on this thing?
We're working some things out. One of the things we have done that hadn't been done in the past is information had been gathered, a letter had gone out, and it's kind of an obvious step. We're sending it back to the key contact to do a final review, because it's really the only opportunity that they have a global look at everything. So we're tweaking things, and we're still looking at things to make sure we can improve things as much as possible.
Okay, is there any questions from the public? Mr. Grogan?
Thank you. I don't think that Paul has enough to do, and I'd like to add to his checklist. One of the things that you have is shows real estate, and under that real estate, obviously there's easements, both granted and easements that IID will be taken, as both for water transmission, and would also like to have within that real estate department, for an example, geothermal leases. We really need a focal point to come in and keep a constant contact with as to when we're trying to come to the district and seeking a geothermal lease. Legal department, of course, would approve as to form, but the actual parts of the lease should be handled through the real estate department, and that's where I would suggest that it also be included.
That's probably pretty consistent with what we do right now, given that most leases and other real estate transactions are primarily handled through real estate, but obviously the board generally has to approve it. Legal gets involved. So I'm not sure that that's that much different than what we do now, is it?
I think that would fall in line with our typical process.
Okay, Vince, you have any comments, or you're in the same agreement with Larry, right? You better be, right? Okay, any other public comments? Okay, Paul, thank you. Okay, then we get into action items, and we've already done number 14 and number 15. And so we'll move on to number 16. And I know we already gave out the resolution for Dr. Martin Luther King, but we needed action item on that, correct or no? Okay.
We approved all 3 resolutions.
Okay, it was all 3 of them? Okay, fine. All right, that's done too then.
You want to honor me again? Good.
We're not Dilla left, so we're good. He took the resolution with him. Number 17, internal auditing, general matters betting.
Good afternoon. I have only one thing to update the board on the, if you remember, on December 20th board meeting, we made a presentation on the Western Farms Trust Lands analysis, and at that time the board had about 3 questions, and I'd like to give you the answer to those questions. First, I believe Director Mendoza, you asked if management agreed with the amounts we are reporting. Since then, we got in contact with the CFO's office, and their staff checked with the CFO's office. We had a couple of meetings, and yes, they do agree with the numbers we presented. And Director Desert, I believe you asked that what happens with the proceeds from the lease of the trust lands. The proceeds are deposited into Water Department General Fund and are used to cover expenses associated with the trust land management.
Okay, so
but they do not go towards defeasing the bonds.
Yeah, so those annual rental income off the western farmlands is $1.5 million to $1,750,000, and we spend all of that each year. That seems like a lot of money to be spending in that department as separate income.
And when you're looking at the budget, probably that's what would have been the place to see how we did not look how they are spent. I just know that they do not go towards defeasing the bonds.
Thank you.
And the third question was Director Hanks and Director Manville, how much per acre do we have to sell the land, the remaining land, in order to cover the remaining outstanding bonds, the associated interest expenses, and cost of sales? And after revising the numbers a little bit downward from the CFO's office, the remaining trust land, we have the 22,000 plus acres. We have to sell it for a minimum of $3,095 per acre in order to break even.
Right. That sounds logical. Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Betty? Any questions from the audience? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 18, which is approval of revised policy number 1080 covering a major work authorization. Mr. Stills?
Yes, Carl Stills, PMO. On December 20th, we brought to you a revision to the major work authorization 1080 policy. That policy, we were looking at tightening up some of the controls and to be able to facilitate the work within the IID. And unless you have any questions, we're recommending approval of that policy. I think it's already been reviewed by Directors Hanks and Directors Desert.
I appreciate you including the changes so we can go back and forth. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Questions from the board?
Was this consent? It says consent.
That's action.
Unless I'm on the wrong page.
It's under action.
It says consent, so it would be.
Any questions? Anthony, you have any questions?
No, I just want to thank Mr. Stills and the directors involved and staff. It was a lot of work, a lot of time and energy put into this particular policy, and I appreciate the work put into it.
There were a lot of managers working on that. We had a cross-departmental team that worked really hard to tighten it up, tie all the policies together, and make it work.
Okay, any questions from the audience for Mr. Stills on this matter? If not, please vote. Thank you. Finance, number 19, acknowledge final documents relating to the 2011 D electrical system refund and revenue bonds. Mr. Broking?
Yes, as in prior bond issues, after the board has approved, authorized the bond issue or the refunding, we've made a commitment to bring back the final documents highlighting the changes from the authorization date from the board. And as you go through these, I'm not going to go through all of them, but most of the changes or many of the changes are date related or amounts, putting in amounts and interest rates. And so there are four documents in front of you. It's the official statement, there's a continuing disclosure statement, there's an ESCO agreement, and a bond purchase agreement. So we're asking that you acknowledge receipt and accept the changes or the updates that we provided you.
Okay,
I move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Well, I move to acknowledge receipt and accept red line copies of the final financing documents and so on.
Okay, there's Director Sanchez second. Is there any questions from the board?
I just had one. In the disclosure with the budget resolution we passed, did that cause or create any need to change any of your disclosure statements?
No, it didn't.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Please vote. Okay, go ahead.
The next item is electing board of directors for the financing corporation. the IID Financing Corporation. This is done on a yearly basis. When we do issue debt, there are two types of debts we can issue. One is revenue bonds, and the other one is certificates of participation. When we issue certificates of participation, there's an installment sales contract, and we need to go through using the IID's Financing Corporation. So today we're asking
Mr. Broking, I'm sorry. The board secretary is telling me that we need to do consent first. So we have an item that was held over, and she was too timid to speak out.
Well, isn't consent done at the end of the agenda?
Oh, because we have to adjourn as the IID board.
Oh, you're so
You
smart.
want to do the consent first?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to.
You want to handle the other item first?
We'll go to item number 6 on consent. That's the adoption of the resolution declaring 2 parcels as surplus and authorizing the sale of the same. That's on page 55.
Yeah, I asked to have this item pulled. There's just an awful lot of development out on the west side, southwest side of the Imperial Valley on solar and right-of-ways and easements, and I'm not sure if we've taken into consideration these 2 small parcels, and if we in turn sell those, if we're not going to be causing us further damage or trouble in any kind of negotiations or right-of-way.
Yes, the previous time. Yes. These are some items that previously came up to the board, and staff was directed to advertise or bid them. And in order to move forward, they need to be declared as surplus. And those properties are very heavily burdened with easements and things of that nature. So from a true value standpoint, there isn't a whole lot of value to them. So I think in terms of that concern, it's a legitimate concern, but I think in this case, it won't materialize.
So in staff's determination, there's no possibility of a hindrance of negotiating a solar deal?
I don't believe so. But in terms of declaring it surplus, that wouldn't affect that. So if something that I'm unaware of comes up, I'll discuss that with staff, and there would not have to be a sale, because this is only an administrative action to declare it surplus. It's not to selling the land at this time.
We don't have a bidder out there that's actively pursuing purchasing these 2.
Well, that's what the next step was. We'd go to bid. So when we come back to the board, we'll research your concern just in case I'm missing something. And if the board elects not to sell it, they don't have to.
Thank you, Paul.
I have a question, Paul. On the 9/10 of an acre, has no access. So the only guy that's probably going to end up buying that dirt cheap is the guy that's surrounding that piece of property, right?
Correct.
And who is the landowner that surrounds that?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that question.
Okay, I won't ask you that question. Okay,
This matter did come before your board, and this was the direction that you issued to staff to list it as surplus, to advertise it, and then to test the market to
Just give me the initials.
Okay, and then
somewhere between A and Z.
Sounds good to me.
The second one, on the one that's the old power line distribution. I mean, these both are just very, very narrow, long parcels, right? One was a cement ditch.
They're similarly burdened in discussing this with staff. So, but I will double check those concerns. The indication in speaking with them, there wasn't concerns in terms of what you're saying.
These were legal parcels dating back into the 40s, correct?
I don't remember the date.
The first one's got a 1943 date on it. They were the tax collectors. Okay, that's fine.
Paul, let me ask this question. By declaring a surplus, if we sell it to somebody, they're not going to be in a position to gain the right-of-ways from the developments going in this area, are they?
I'm not sure I followed you there.
You mean somebody other than the surrounding property owner?
Right.
That's a fair question.
Could you repeat the question?
If we declare it surplus, and they're very small parcels, and someone purchases it, they're not going to hold out and game the situation because there's a possibility of some right-of-ways coming through here.
Well, we retain any rights away for ourselves. So in terms of that,
yeah. would it be any other right of ways?
No, but I mean, just to mitigate for that, if you have, I think what the impetus for this is you have a bid, you have an offer, and it is the surrounding property owner.
All right,
So
thank you.
if somebody were to try to,
Well, that was the
game
way
it-
I understood it. So
Yeah.
okay.
That's the only logical buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to,
Move to
would somebody make a
Move
motion?
to approve.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, moved and second, please vote.
Yes.
Push the button.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to number
That's it.
19.
Make a motion to adjourn as the financing
Okay.
corporation.
Or is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Thank you. Okay, and then do we have to adjourn back?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
please vote. Thank you.